It is time now for us to take a look back at the week's headline-making stories in our Reporters Rewind. Our guests at the round table are Wallace Ford, who is a regular and a contributor here on Arise America, as well as Rob Smith, who is a journalist, and he's also the author of Closets, Combat, and Coming Out. And we also have Arise News correspondent Leila Mcdowell, who is joining us from our Washington, D.C. bureau. Welcome to all of you.
Good evening.
Hey, good to see you.
And
Happy Friday
Halloween.
to you.
Yes.
Oh, well, thank you. It's not my holiday, but you can have it.
All right.
So let's get started. It made a lot of news, got a lot of attention. Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, said in an article that was published that he's proud to be gay. Apparently, it was no secret in Silicon Valley, but he took this opportunity to have a public forum about it, and he said he wanted to help give others a voice. So I want to know what your reaction is with it. You're not new to us, but you haven't been around in a while, Rob, so I'll give you the first crack at it.
Okay. Well, it's always a good thing when somebody comes out, so that is always a positive thing. I think my reaction when I found out that Tim Cook came out was like, okay, it's about time. And also, I sometimes want people to make a bigger deal about coming out because it is such a big deal. I mean, he becomes the first openly gay CEO basically in history right now. And he does so via kind of an op-ed piece in a magazine that's kind of just put out there. I would have liked to have seen a bigger statement, maybe coming out during an Apple product launch or something like that. It's a big deal. And I think that it would be great if it was more of a production.
Wallace, is it a big deal to you?
Well, I'm looking forward to the day when it isn't a big deal, but we're not quite there yet. So yeah, it's a big deal. But I'm interested, of course, there's that old question: is when did people know this? What did they know, and when did they know it? The point of the fact is that I gather the senior executives at Apple senior management board of directors, I guess, must have known about this for a while. And if it was something to announce, then why? How does something like that not be a public matter for all this time that Tim Cook has been a senior member of the Apple management? And if they didn't know, then of course one wonders what the next steps are. But the real point about this, I think, Debbie, is that we are seeing some real levels of progress with respect to this whole LGBT gender preference situation and gender preference situations in corporate America. But frankly, it's a status that we're seeing now happen with some members of the gay community that most women and most African Americans can only aspire to even after all of this time. And that's a point that I think needs to be made.
Leila, I want to get your general impressions, but also, there's been some criticism that, there was really no risk. Why didn't he come out, a long time ago? And he's sort of being a leader from behind in this regard. What do you think, Leila?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, they really haven't talked about why he came out now. And it really he came out with less fanfare than the iPhone 6. So that's a sign of the times that him announcing the fact that he was gay got a lot less attention. It got a lot of attention, but a lot less attention than the new iPhone. And I think that is a sign of the times. You have gay marriage legal in 30 states. But the interesting thing is in 29 states, it's still legal to fire someone for being gay. And surveys by the Human Rights Campaign show that at least half of all LGBT employees are in the closet. And it reminds us that, some years ago, in 2007, John Brown, who was then CEO of BP, was outed. And he later wrote a book called The Glass Closet. And he talked about how important it was for gay CEOs to come out. He said it was good for business. But this is obviously the first one who has taken that advice and done so.
I want to just do one more round on this topic before we go into the next one, and that is, while it can be seen certainly in the LGBT community and even in the community, in the society at large, as a good thing that this Fortune 500 CEO has come out, he's not representative of the average person who is, whether they're struggling with their identity and their sexuality or struggling with society's perceptions of it. Does this help the regular Joe, if you will, as much as perhaps he wants it to?
And I go back to the fact that I never want to say that coming out is a bad thing, because it's not a bad thing at all. It's actually a very good thing. But when you have somebody at such a high level, such an elite level coming out, you've got Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, coming out, CEO, wealthy elite, that whole thing. how much does it really change the experiences of LGBT people that are actually on the ground, have to actually negotiate this in the workplace? Does it change that situation a whole lot? I don't think so. And it is true that you can still be fired in 29 states for being gay. Yes, it gets the ball rolling, but we need to not pretend as if this is going to make a real change for somebody that's on the ground at an entry-level position negotiating being LGBT in the workplace.
Go ahead, Leila.
Now, I was going to say, I would actually disagree, because I think when you look at the brand of Apple, trendy, hip, reaches a young demographic and in the forefront of all things new and in the forefront of technology and coming out of Silicon Valley, it certainly does, particularly when you add it to, some football players, Michael Sam coming out. I mean, no more testosterone-driven sport than football. And I think all of this begins to send the message to young people and others who are struggling with these issues that it really is okay, and they have these mentors and they have these models. So I think it does begin to change the climate, particularly when we have the Supreme Court making decisions that saying gay marriage is constitutional and so on. So I think it's significant. I don't think we'll see a change, though, much in Wall Street. Silicon Valley, very different kind of culture than the very conservative old boy network of Wall Street.
Very interesting point there.
The Supreme Court did not say that the gay marriage is constitutional. It said the states can make have the right and the power.
Yeah, they left the power within states. It's a states' rights issue.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Let's move on before we run out of time, and let's talk about this midterm election, because heck, who's not talking about it? Yeah. Wallace, I figure you have a lot to say about it, so I want to start with you. What's your prediction, first of all? Do you think the Democrats can hold on to the Senate?
I think the Democrats can hold on to the Senate, but it's probably going to be about the same narrow margin that we see right now, which means that, spoiler alert, there's going to be more gridlock in the last 2 years of the Obama administration, and that's unfortunate for the American people and, of course, for the Obama presidency. But that's my short-term prediction.
Leila, you're right there in the Beltway. What are you hearing?
Well, but interestingly enough, Democrats are pleading with black voters to come out. You have ads running on black radio right now with President Obama, who still has an 85% approval rating amongst African Americans. And you've even gotten some ads that are touting Ferguson and Trayvon Martin, like in North Carolina, very tight Senate race there with Senator Kay Hagan and Tom Tillis, a conservative Republican. The other interesting thing about North Carolina is that you've had a movement there that has been focused on getting out the vote for over a year, called Moral Mondays. It's a coalition of groups that have been led by the NAACP and others that are fighting against some of the right-wing conservative policies there that we see under the new governor and the new legislature. So that's going to be a very interesting test of the black vote. A lot of the other Democratic base voters are very disaffected with the Democratic Party, and this could be the difference between whether that Senate becomes Republican-controlled or Democratic. Hispanics are upset because of the lack of fight, they believe, on immigration reform. You have some immigrant advocates saying that Obama's policy has been shameful. So some pretty strong words. And then liberals and progressives are upset about the foreign policy. They voted for Obama, and Democrats, particularly because they were against the war, and now they see a very aggressive foreign policy. So a lot of those base voters may not turn out, and that could be a big problem.
There seems to be a lot of disillusionment there. I want to bring Rob into this, and there's an interesting dichotomy, I think, going on here, because a lot of Democratic candidates distanced themselves, did not use President Obama to campaign, either for getting a seat or keeping their seat. And then now, in this last few days before the election, Obama's sort of like doing this Hail Mary media push, trying to get black folk out to vote.
Right. Well, the thing about it is that however you feel about President Obama, you have to realize that in some circles he is deeply unpopular. When his name is brought into the conversation, it becomes
an understatement.
It's an understatement, right? But when his name is brought into certain conversations, it becomes less about these issues that are going on the local level and more about President Barack Obama. So I think that they've done what is kind of right for them to do at this point by kind of keeping him out of there. But I really don't think that there is this going to be this huge groundswell of support from black voters on the ground for the midterm elections, because there's so much apathy.
There is so much apathy, and it's so important, though, for the black vote to turn out for the Democrats to keep the Senate. And I don't know what you're hearing, Wallace. You have your finger on the pulse of this. I don't get the sense that the black vote is galvanized for this election.
Well, the black vote is not something that can be turned off and on like a spigot, and you can't basically ignore the black vote or diss the black vote by not affiliating with Barack Obama, and then at the last minute kind of turn around and say, oh no, actually we do need you in any event. And even though this person that you've supported, and really the thing is that the black vote has been the fuel that drove the Democratic engine in 2008 and 2012. I mean, the statistics are just overwhelming in that regard, and I think it can turn out to be a real mistake. But let me just say one quick thing, which is that this unpopularity that we talk about with Barack Obama, it's really an incremental process. For 6 years, the Republicans and the Republicans and the conservatives have sought to demonize Barack Obama, and what we're seeing is that they're finally succeeding. They've
been very successful.
Yes, they have.
At that.
Yes, they have. Yes, they have.
Yeah, as we talk about turning on and off the black vote, all I can think of is that Beyonce song. If you love me, then you should have put a ring on it. I was like, oh, now,
Right?
we got to stop it right there. Leila Mcdowell joining us from Washington D.C. Wallace Ford, Rob Smith. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
It was a great conversation.
Okay.
Come back soon.
Happy Halloween.